Love isn't supposed to feel like an obligation. Marriage shouldn't resemble a slow suffocation. Yet, as I sat on the couch, staring at the clock ticking past midnight, I realized something had shifted in my life. My wife, Vanessa, was late again. Her job at Holloway & Pierce, an elite law firm, demanded long hours. That much I understood. But the irregularities in her schedule, the secrecy in her tone, the lingering scent of expensive cologne on her clothes, those things whispered of something more sinister. I wasn't always a suspicious man. Trust came naturally to me. But trust can be eroded, corroded by unanswered questions, vague excuses, and late-night absences. The door creaked open. Vanessa entered, heels clicking against the hardwood floor. A delicate black dress hugged her curves, and her makeup, usually faded by the end of the day, remained flawless. "You're late," I said, keeping my voice steady. She set down her purse without meeting my gaze. "Work ran over. Again," she sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's a high-pressure job, Liam. You know that." I studied her. The tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided eye contact, it all screamed deception. "Who were you with?" Her head snapped up. "What?" "You heard me." Vanessa hesitated, her lips parting, then closing again as if choosing her words carefully. "I had dinner with my boss. It was professional." I scoffed. "At midnight?" Her eyes flashed with irritation. "It's not like that." My patience frayed. "Then what is it like?" She crossed her arms. "You don't trust me?" Instead of answering, I stood and walked past her. The smell of an unfamiliar fragrance clung to her dress. Something masculine. Something expensive. Vanessa reached for my arm. "Liam, don't do this." I pulled away. "You already did." The first crack in the foundation. Suspicion became my shadow. I started noticing things I had once ignored, the way her phone never left her hand, the hushed conversations in the hallway, the sudden bursts of laughter over texts she never shared. Vanessa, once so present in our marriage, had become a ghost haunting our home. I tried to push it aside. Paranoia wasn't attractive. Jealousy wasn't rational. But doubt? Doubt was insidious. One evening, after she fell asleep, I made a decision I never thought I would. I checked her phone. Her messages were clean. Too clean. No long threads, no late-night exchanges, nothing that explained the distance between us. But in her email, tucked between invoices and client updates, sat one message that sent my blood boiling. "Richard Holloway, tonight was unforgettable. Can't wait for the next time." A response followed. "Vanessa, I feel guilty. But I can't stop." My pulse pounded in my ears. I wasn't imagining things. This wasn't insecurity. This was betrayal. The woman I loved had fallen into another man's arms. And her boss, Richard Holloway, had no idea what kind of enemy he had just made. "You said, betrayal feels like drowning. One moment you're secure, anchored in love. The next you're gasping for air, struggling against the weight of lies pulling you under." That night, as I stared at Vanessa's message to her boss, I realized something. I wasn't drowning. I was burning. Rage scorched through my veins, turning my hands into fists. My wife, the woman I had devoted my life to, had fallen into another man's arms. Not just any man. Her boss. Richard Holloway. A powerful, arrogant CEO who probably thought he could take whatever he wanted, including someone else's wife. I wouldn't let him. Vanessa stirred beside me, completely unaware that her secret lay exposed. Her breathing was soft, peaceful, as if she hadn't just shattered everything we had built. I wanted to wake her. I wanted to scream. But anger without control is useless. I needed answers. I needed a plan. So I waited. Morning confrontation. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom curtains. Vanessa rolled over, stretching as if she hadn't a care in the world. When her eyes met mine, she smiled, until she noticed the phone in my hand. Her body stiffened. "Liam, what are you doing?" I turned the screen toward her. "Reading." Her face drained of color. She sat up, gripping the sheets as if they could shield her from the inevitable. "Explain," I demanded. My voice was calm. Too calm. She swallowed hard. Don't lie." Her lips parted, but no words came. Guilt stained her expression, dark and heavy. "Richard Halloway," I continued. "You feel guilty but can't stop." "Stop what exactly?" She flinched. "Liam, please. Answer me." Tears welled in her eyes. "It's complicated." I let out a cold laugh. "Cheating isn't complicated. It's a choice." She reached for my hand. I pulled away. "Please listen," she begged. My jaw clenched. "I'm listening." Vanessa inhaled shakily. "Richard, he's manipulative. It started as work dinners, harmless meetings. Then, he started getting closer. Touching my hand, my shoulder. I told him it wasn't appropriate, but he wouldn't stop." My stomach twisted. "And you let it happen?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "He threatened me, Liam. He said if I didn't give him what he wanted, he'd fire me. Blacklist me. Ruin me." A sharp silence stretched between us. "You expect me to believe that?" My voice was tight with disbelief. She nodded desperately. "I swear. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do." "Did you sleep with him?" A pause. A hesitation. That was enough. The answer was obvious before she even whispered, "Yes." Something inside me cracked. Love, trust, loyalty, all of it shattered in an instant. "You should have told me," I said. My voice no longer sounded like my own. I was scared. I shook my head. "No. You were weak." Her sobs grew louder. But I wasn't moved. I wasn't her husband anymore in that moment. I was a man who had been humiliated. A man who wanted revenge. Plotting payback. I left the house without another word. My mind raced, fury and betrayal pushing me forward. Richard Halloway had taken something from me. He had destroyed my marriage, humiliated me, treated me like I was insignificant. He needed to learn that I wasn't a man to be toyed with. Destroying him wouldn't be easy. He was rich, powerful, untouchable in the corporate world. But everyone has a weakness, and I was going to find his. I drove downtown, parking outside the towering glass headquarters of Halloway and Pierce. Employees bustled in and out, unaware that their mighty CEO was nothing more than a predator in a suit. I had two objectives: expose Richard and make him suffer. I needed evidence. Proof that he wasn't just sleeping with my wife, but using his position to manipulate other women, too. Vanessa had said he was ruthless. I was about to show him what ruthless really looked like. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Hey, Mark. I need a favor." Mark was an old college friend, now an expert hacker. If there was dirt on Richard, he'd find it. "I'm listening," Mark said. I clenched the steering wheel. "I need everything you can dig up on a man named Richard Halloway." A pause. Then a chuckle. "This sounds personal." I exhaled slowly. "It is." "Then let's burn him to the ground." As I hung up, something inside me shifted. Richard thought he could take what was mine. He had no idea that I was about to take everything from him. "You said, revenge isn't about rage. It's about patience, calculation, waiting for the perfect moment to strike." Richard Halloway had built his empire on power, intimidation, and manipulation. He thought himself untouchable. That delusion would be his downfall. I spent the next few days gathering everything I could on him. Mark, my hacker friend, worked tirelessly behind the scenes, digging into Richard's emails, financial records, and, most importantly, his secret. And there were plenty. Bribes. Fraud. Under-the-table deals. A trail of women who had been coerced, just like Vanessa. I clenched my fist. My wife's betrayal still cut deep, but now I saw the bigger picture. She wasn't his first victim. She wouldn't be his last. Unless I stopped him. Setting the trap. Richard was scheduled to host an elite charity gala at the Grand Regency Hotel, an event dripping with wealth, influence, and media coverage. Perfect. I needed to hit him where it hurt the most. His reputation. Through Mark's digging, we found something damning, an incriminating video from his office security cameras. It showed Richard forcing himself onto a junior employee. She had resisted. He hadn't cared. That was the nail in his coffin. I uploaded the file to an encrypted drive, set to release publicly at the height of his event. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to see him fall in real time. The night of the gala. Dressed in a tailored black suit, I arrived at the Grand Regency, blending seamlessly with the elite. Gold chandeliers glittered overhead, champagne flowed freely, and artificial laughter filled the air. I spotted Vanessa instantly. She stood beside Richard, dressed in a sleek emerald gown. Her eyes scanned the crowd nervously, lips pressed into a tight line. I walked toward them. Richard's gaze landed on me, and his smirk faltered. "Liam," he said smoothly, masking his unease. "Didn't expect to see you here." I smiled. "I wouldn't miss it." Vanessa's hand trembled around her wine glass. She knew something was coming. Richard, oblivious, turned his attention to the crowd, raising a glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Together we—" His voice cut off. Gasps rippled through the room. Every screen in the hall had switched from the event's slideshow to the video. The footage of him forcing himself onto his employee. Silence fell. Then chaos. People murmured, eyes widening in horror. Reporters scrambled to record the screens. The CEO of Holloway and Pierce stood frozen, his face draining of color. Vanessa's breath hitched beside him. "Turn it off!" Richard barked. Too late. Mark had made sure it couldn't be turned off. Security rushed forward. Richard shoved past them, heading for the exit. I stepped into his path. "Going somewhere?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. His eyes blazed with fury. "You did this." I tilted my head. "Did I?" He lunged at me. I dodged effortlessly. He stumbled, humiliated in front of hundreds of his peers. Police officers entered, pushing through the crowd. One of them, a detective, strode toward Richard with cold authority. "Richard Holloway, you're under arrest for sexual misconduct, bribery, and workplace harassment." The fall of a king. As they cuffed him, I leaned in and whispered, "You threatened my wife. You ruined lives. Now, yours is over." His expression contorted with rage, but he knew. I had won. And I wasn't done yet. Richard Holloway had fallen. The man who thought himself invincible now sat behind bars, his empire crumbling like ash in the wind. But my revenge wasn't complete. Not yet. The next morning, his arrest dominated every news channel. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire CEO caught in scandal," and clips of his disgraceful exit from the gala flooded the internet. The board of Holloway and Pierce acted swiftly, stripping him of his position. His frozen assets meant he couldn't buy his way out. He had spent years wielding power over others. Now, he was powerless. Exactly where he belonged. Vanessa's plea. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, when the front door creaked open. Vanessa stepped inside, dark circles under her eyes, her once perfect posture now slumped in exhaustion. She hesitated before speaking. "You did it." I didn't respond. She exhaled shakily. "I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say." Tears welled in her eyes. "Liam, I never meant to." "Don't." My voice was sharp. "You chose this. You let it happen." She flinched, pain flashing across her face. I was scared. I leaned back, studying her. "Maybe. But fear doesn't excuse betrayal." She stepped closer. "I want to fix this." I let out a cold laugh. "Fix what?" "Our marriage." She nodded, desperation in her gaze. I shook my head. "Vanessa, I don't trust you anymore. And without trust, what's left?" Her lip trembled. "I still love you." I stood, heart heavy but resolute. "Then you should have fought for me before you let another man touch you." Silence stretched between us. Then, finally, she whispered, "Are you leaving?" I grabbed my keys. "No, Vanessa. You are." Her breath hitched, but she didn't argue. She knew she had lost me. Minutes later, the door shut behind her. And just like that, our marriage was over. A new beginning. Months passed. Richard's trial was swift. With overwhelming evidence, he was sentenced to 10 years for workplace harassment, assault, and financial crimes. His reputation was permanently destroyed. Vanessa tried reaching out a few times, but I never responded. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. One evening, as I sat at a bar downtown, a woman slid onto the stool beside me. She had warm brown eyes, a soft smile, and a confidence that was magnetic. "Rough day?" she asked playfully. I chuckled. "More like a rough year." She extended her hand. "I'm Emily." I took it. "Liam." And just like that, I realized something. Revenge wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning.